Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Knitting Today at the Stitchin Post. I'm Nancy, and Val's behind the camera.
Hi.
So we're all saying hello. Hope you all are well. Sorry we missed last week. Conflict of timing issues. It happens. I apologize. We all do here. But here we are. We're going to jump into what I had for last week and this week because we're kind of doubling up. The first is we wanted to show you a new yarn that we have by a company called Trailheads. Trailheads is a small company out of Canada. It's a mother and daughter team, which we love the idea, women making a difference today, which is perfect considering I think it was last week or the week before we celebrated the suffragette. Which if you didn't catch, one of our customers did a whole quilt, and Karen, who works here, they were amazing quilts, so try to look for that online. So Trailheads yarns, let's get back to this, because the first yarn up, and we have a number of colors, we've sold out of one or two, is Appalachian Trail. It is a fingering weight sock yarn. It's 65% cotton, 35% nylon. That nylon is going to give it some real nice strength and body. If you like cotton socks, it's beautiful. They are hand-dyed. It's 435 yards, 100 grams for $30. What I have done and am almost finished with is a shawl. This is a free pattern on Ravelry. This is not blocked yet, so this will open up beautifully. Called Close to You. I'm going to hold it up or position it so Val can do it. I've shown it before in fingering sock yarn, before in the Ba yarn of New York. Today it's in the cotton. And I left it on the needles because I'm going to show, or get ready at actually probably next week to show fixing mistakes and different things. Last week we started our sweater, and I featured this once before with our yarn, Ultra Alpaca from Barocco, the pitch sweater. And one of the things I wanted to discuss with this was twofold. One, how to check your gauge. When we talk about doing shawls such as this and some others, gauge isn't a huge issue. If you're a little tight, so it's a little smaller. If you're a little loose, it's a little bigger. When we talk about garments and knitting sweaters, it's very important. If you think about a worsted weight yarn on a US 7 or 8 needle at 5 stitches, between 4.5 and 5 stitches, depending on what the pattern might call for. But we're going to use 5 stitches per inch for just to talk today. If you, and Val doesn't need to come up close to this yet until I check gauge, but if you talk about gauge and you get 6 stitches per inch instead of 5, what does that mean? Well, it means you're very tight on your knitting. It's opposite of what we want to think about. A lot of times when we think of 6 stitches per inch, we think, oh, I have way too many stitches. I have to go down a needle size to get less. It's not. It's up a needle size to get less. We need less stitches, so they have to be bigger. But a lot of people who don't check gauge and they come in with a sweater that's either way too small, or they tell me, I've knit sweaters and I can't knit this because I never get the size right. Most likely it's because of gauge. So I wanted to go over how we check gauge. So when they say do a 4-inch swatch, I want you all, and I think I did this 2 weeks ago as well, I want you to do a much bigger swatch. I want you to double the stitches that they talk about and even double the height. And why is that? As we knit along, and I'm going to show an example of my knitting where I got too loose, we want to know what our fabric's going to do. Now, I knit this swatch, and a lot of people came in because cables, they go, oh my gosh, look at how small this got here. When you knit cables, it pulls your knitting in. It tightens it up. Not necessarily a bad thing if you're on gauge, and most patterns will tell you what the gauge is for that. So how do we check? If I put this down, and here's where Val will have to get up close, and I'm doing it upside down. We are counting 2 inches. So between the 0 and 2, not the whole 4. It's easier to take a 2-inch gauge here, and I'm going to count exact stitches here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I can't count. I'm sorry. Hold on. I'm over counting. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and I'm into 11. Now, why did I count 11? 11 times 2 is 22 stitches. So my gauge here, I would have to tighten up if I wanted that 5 stitch per inch on it or less, which I think this pattern calls for 4.5 on it. When you're doing cables up here, it's the same stitch count, and if you notice, my cables are tighter. Now I blocked this, so my gauge is off on blocking, and I've stretched it. It's been pulled, so I can't really use this to tell you gauge because I was on gauge for my sweater. But I want to pull my pitch sweater over, and from my gauge, I was to be on a size 6 needle. And I knew, and I've checked gauge as I went up, and I was on gauge. But as I got up to about here, I noticed that down here, where my cables were a little tighter, and here, I was a little tighter. By the time I got up here, can you see I'm a little looser? And I don't know if that's showing through.
Kind of.
But my fabric looks different than it does here. And I could physically see getting looser. So I had to go down in needle size to a 5. Or else this line that I want straight, and you could see it was kind of bowing out here a little, will not stay on gauge and true to size. And that will change the pattern. And if I turn to the page, if I can get there, where we look at the back of the sweater, where these cables start to open up and I need to go to the shoulder line, if my gauge is off and I'm too big, this distance between here to here will be longer than what it's supposed to be or wider, and it will not match up. And on a sweater like this, that's important. Now, a lot of people were scared of this sweater and they said, oh my gosh, it's going to be way too hard for me and I can't do it. It says advanced. And I'm here to tell you, everybody that started the class with me last Friday, and I have some who I have to speak to that are not local coming, they're abroad, it isn't. Because these cables, if you look, and I've already started opening up here, it's the same cable, it's the same pattern. The second thing I wanted to go over today and to talk about is what is the difference between seed stitch, double seed, moss stitch, double moss. And a lot of people think of these as interchangeable because sometimes designers get it wrong. And there is a difference, and hopefully when you look at patterns, you'll be able to tell the difference. So this pattern here is called moss. And why I like moss stitch, and I have a little bit bigger sample here to show you, is 2 rows are the same. Here's 2 purl rows, 2 knit rows. So when you start on the right side and you knit 1, purl 1, knit 1, purl 1, I'm getting ready to change my pattern here. So my purl becomes a knit, and you go across. Row 2 is the same as what you see. So in other words, you knit the knits and you purl the purls. So you get 2 identical rows that look the same, as if they were ribbing. Row 3 is an offset row, meaning if you had just done, like here, the 2 knits, now I'm up to my 2 purls, I'm going to start this next row with a knit. So from here, I'm going to go knit, purl, knit, purl. Can everybody see that? I've offset it. So now when I go to my wrong row, I'm repeating exactly what I see. You're going to knit the knits and purl the purls. So what's seed stitch? That's regular moss. Seed stitch, you are offsetting every row. So forget the number, whether it's an even number of stitches or an odd number of stitches. What I want to teach people is to learn how to read your knitting. Because if you can tell the difference between a knit and a purl, you will not mess yourself up. So row 1 is going to be knit, purl, knit, purl, knit, purl. And regardless of what you end on, if you end on a knit stitch, when you turn it over to the wrong side, you're going to see a purl stitch. It's going to mean you start with a knit. You're doing the reverse of what you see. So seed stitch is knit 1, purl 1, and you offset it, meaning change the knits to a purls or the purls to a knits, so that every row is a different row. Any questions? So let's go to double seed. All double seed means is you're going to knit 2, purl 2, knit 2, purl 2, and on the reverse, you're still reversing exactly what you see. So if you ended with 2 knits, so when you reverse it, you see 2 purls, it means you're starting with 2 knits. And you've doubled it, thus double seed. For double moss, you have a knit 2, purl 2, knit again across, and when you reverse it, you knit the knits and purl the purls. So if you ended with 2 knits, when you reverse it and you row 2, you're going to look at 2 purls. It means you're going to start with 2 purls. So the most important thing I can keep telling people, regardless of your pattern, is learn to read your stitches. And a little example of learning to read stitches is on this pattern close to home. I was knitting with some people this past week, and my marker here, and again, I love to show my favorite markers, these small colored ones. I love these because they do not get in my way. They're just brilliant. My marker fell on the ground, and of course we were on a gravel and stone and dirt, and it was history. I don't care what color it was going to blend in with the ground. So I had to look at and decide where. Now I knew this was 25 stitches, so yes, I could count. But this pattern on the right side, every time you come this way after the marker, you have an SSK. So I've just done it here. Without my marker, it didn't mean I couldn't knit. It just meant that I had to read my stitches and read the row below. And that's the second thing you'll hear me talk about all the time, is look to the row below to see what you should do on the row you're on. So if you don't have one of our opening colored stitch markers to tell you what the right side is, just by reading the row below, you'll know. Now, where will that come handy? A, in doing the seed stitch or moss, but in doing cables. So if I know this row here is a cable row, and I have to do 4 rows before the next cable row, I can count below, and I can come up and count. But so when I'm pulling out, and I want to show this for those who are watching that were here during class, and I'll show it again next week. I literally took all these stitches between here and here down to about here, maybe a little lower, because I had made a mistake and I wanted to fix it. And rather than fixing each stitch individually, I took it all down and knit it all back up. So next week I'm going to show you how to do it and use one of my projects to show how to do that, or a sample, so that you can see it, because it actually is very easy. Scary. It is scary. But I want to show you about what's coming up. And it's not scary. It's actually very easy. One of the yarns I didn't point to and use, and I've been using this, I want to show a new product we got in, because these are my favorite cable needles. So they are wood, so to me they feel really good. They do have a little dip to hold your stitches. They come in a pack of 3 for $9.50. They will soon be up online, but you can call us. You get 3 sizes in them, from small to large. And I was using it today as a pointer, just because it feels really good. But I didn't talk about the other trail yarns that we have. And we have these over in our embroidery section with Sue Spargo. And I think all of us here have bought some. You get 15 mini skeins, and I want to read how many yards each, because I keep saying 85, but you get 15 skeins of 30 yards each for $65. The yarn is Tencel, so it's a really cool yarn to stitch with. But this winter, fall, we have a surprise for you, because we are going to knit with Tencel. So we are going to open these skeins up, wind them into little balls, and knit them into a shawl that we will showcase this winter. And what's coming as a teaser for the holidays is a naughty or nice shawl. And it's an Advent shawl, and they're kits, and you'll be able to pre-order them from us They'll be here in November, but we'll kind of showcase a little bit. So you got to decide whether you're naughty or nice, because starting